I'm Quinn Crosby, and coming up on WVU News, I'll tell you about a dangerous drinking trend among college students. Drinking and driving has been an issue in Morgantown, but coming up, I'll tell you about a new offense that is taking police officers by surprise. It's one of the most hotly contested races, the presidential election. Do you plan to get out and vote? Police officers are equipped with naloxone, typically in nasal spray form like this, to revive those who have overdosed on heroin and opioids, giving them a second chance at life. Driving is a multi-aspect task requiring mental alertness, visual and auditory processing, and hand-eye coordination. Opioids are central nervous system depressants, making drugged drivers equally as dangerous as drunk drivers. West Virginia Child Advocacy Centers have seen over 3,000 new clients in the 2016 fiscal year, and 147 of these have been in Monongalia County. But this does not necessarily mean that abuse is increasing. I'm Quinn Crosby, and coming up on WVU News, I sat down with West Virginia Secretary of State to tell you why you need to cast your ballot. The average binge drinker consumes 8 drinks in one sitting. This is more than the recommended limit for both men and women combined. Thanks, Hannah and Kristen. Binge drinkers bring their blood alcohol concentration levels well above the legal limit of 0.08. Binge drinking. It's a problem that many universities experience. While people that suffer from alcoholism are everywhere, Morgantown Police Chief Ed Preston says that in this college town, students make up a more dangerous group of consumers.
Another type of alcohol abuser that we deal with quite often that's also more problematic is what we refer to as the chronic inebriate. And a lot of our students fall into this category because they may not drink anything at all throughout the week, but then, come the weekend, the first thing that they do is they go binge drinking to drink to an absolute high level of intoxication.
The average binge drinker consumes 8 drinks in one sitting. This is more than the recommended limit for both men and women combined. With weekend tailgates and bars that stay open until 3 a.m., students can find it difficult to pace themselves and practice safe drinking habits.
Being in a fraternity, there's lots of, might be some pressure, some opportunities to drink, and one of the biggest things is always knowing your limits and knowing when it's appropriate and when it's not appropriate to drink. You
can learn more about drinking responsibly by visiting WVU's Student Center for Health, Well WVU. Chief Preston also said that enforcing rules on stadium beer purchases have also helped control binge drinking. Driving under the influence means not only driving after drinking, but also driving after doing drugs. With an average of 150 DUIs per year in Morgantown and an all-time high in drug overdoses, police officers are now working to keep not only drunk drivers, but also drug users off the road.
Now we're experiencing something that we have not necessarily experienced before in the past, but we're getting a lot more drugged driving arrests where people are under the influence of opiates such as heroin or OxyContin. And we're seeing a very significant uptick right now of that type of offense.
Driving is a multi-aspect task requiring mental alertness, visual and auditory processing, and hand-eye coordination. Opioids are central nervous system depressants, making drugged drivers equally as dangerous as drunk drivers. In 2014, more than 31 million people drove after drug or alcohol use. While police officers are working to keep impaired drivers off the roads with routine checkpoints, transportation services are also doing their part. Statistics show that almost half of all drivers who were killed in crashes tested positive for drugs in their system. Officers trained to detect drugs will monitor field sobriety tests to arrest and keep drug users off the road. In the 2012 presidential election, West Virginia had the lowest turnout rate of any state in the country. Is West Virginia moved from 45th to the 26th place in voter turnout in the United States after this year's primary. The bad news, recent polls say only 54% of Americans actually go out and vote. Secretary of State Natalie Tennant says that is simply not acceptable.
You don't want a minority of the people deciding for the majority of the state. And, sometimes people even say to me, I don't vote. And they think they take that as pride. Well, you know, that's not rebellion, that's surrender.
What's the number one reason Americans don't go out and vote? Because they believe their vote simply won't matter. But that's not true. Here's a fact. Back in 1845, just one vote made Texas an official state and part of this country. And while Americans over the age of 45 have the highest voter turnout, college students are the least likely to hit the polls. That's why Secretary Tenet recently made a stop to tell students why it is so important.
We have implemented online voter registration. So over the last 11 and a half months, it has been very successful. We've had more than 45,000 people interact with our online voter registration system.
This upcoming election, I think, is really important. You know, there's a lot of big issues coming in. We got two candidates that are polar opposites, and that's why everyone needs to vote.
In the last presidential race, approximately 58% of Americans voted, but Secretary Tenet is hoping that here in West Virginia, those numbers will be much higher. I was able to sit down with Secretary Tenet to discuss why people in the Mountain State should be taking advantage of their right to vote. Child abuse is a nationwide problem, with a report of abuse made every 10 seconds. But one advocacy center in Mon County is working to lower these numbers. I sat down with Morgantown Police Chief Ed Preston to see what's causing this trend and how the dangerous habit is affecting students right here at WVU. There are about 34 drug overdose deaths per 100,000 West Virginia residents. That's more than double the national average. Now, West Virginia Secretary of State Natalie Tennant is sending out a clear message that everyone needs to get out and vote. A nationally accredited child advocacy center in Mon County is doing their part in helping prevent abuse and keeping kids safe. I sat down with the center's director to learn more about how they are helping children in crisis situations. I recently explored the heroin problem with local police to see just what they are doing to stop these numbers from rising.